Okay, folks, so today I've got Miles Davis joining me for a cozy chat. Miles has got over 200 globe supporting and flat smashing videos on his YouTube video, going back for about 2 years. Is that right, Miles? Is it 2 or 3
Yeah, that's
years?
about right. And there's a few Apollo moon landing ones as well.
Well, it's all part of the mix, though, isn't it?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we usually start off with either or questions, just to get us both relaxed. So the first question is spirits or beer?
Beer probably.
YouTube or Netflix?
YouTube.
Cricket or rugby?
Oh, that's a difficult one. Um, if I had to choose, probably cricket because the weather's warmer.
Okay. The Lake District or the Scottish Highlands?
Scottish Highlands.
It,
But
it
both are
would win every time.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So when you're listening to your with your earphones on, do you listen to music or podcasts?
Both.
Okay, fair enough.
Not at the
I,
same time, but
I didn't let Select get away with that. I pushed him to one or the other. What you use both.
if
That's
I
we'll,
had
we'll,
to
we'll
choose, it would probably be. Well, I don't listen to podcasts as much as I listen to YouTube videos and things like that. But I probably spend more time doing that, catching up on news and stuff than listening to music. But yeah,
Yeah. Do you get people sending you videos to listen to or watch?
some people ask me to have a look at things.
Yeah,
Um,
if I looked at every one of the videos that suggested, I wouldn't have any time for anything else.
I don't get that.
Uh,
I don't get that many. Sort of. Yeah, probably no more than about a couple of dozen in the last few years.
okay, now Windows or Apple,
Windows,
online shopping or in store.
online more than in store, I guess now.
Yeah, London or Edinburgh.
Edinburgh,
I would agree on that. It's a beautiful city, isn't it? A
London.
crew.
London's too big and impersonal, and yeah, I like London, but yeah,
Yeah, it's okay for a day, but
yeah.
anything more than that is it's not pleasant. So a cruise or a skiing holiday.
Ugh. I'd say neither. It would probably the cruise would come in ahead of a skiing holiday, but I don't think I'd choose either.
Okay, and for our American cousins, hatchback or station wagon, or for us, an estate. Hatchback or estate.
Uh, an estate.
Okay, that's the 10 gone. So, where do you live, Miles?
Sorry,
Where do you live?
I live in Fife. I don't particularly want to get more specific than that.
That's fine. That's fine. But your accent's not Scottish. Where were you? Where did you grow up?
I was born and grew up in darkest stockbroker belt Surrey.
Okay. And when did you leave there?
Um, well, I did my undergraduate degree in Brighton and then came to Edinburgh as a postgraduate. So I was 21 when I moved to
So
Edinburgh.
was that to further your education
Yeah,
or a
yeah.
job? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, that was my next question. What's your education history?
Well, I mean, after school, I did a biochemistry degree and then came to Edinburgh studying molecular biology and cell biology, molecular genetics, that kind of thing. And pretty much stayed. I've worked. My education has never stopped, but I worked as a research scientist for off and on for 35 years, so totally of about 30 years experience. I had a couple
Would
of
that
breaks
be
doing
within
other
a
things.
would that be within a university doing research or for a company?
Within the university, I worked briefly for the blood transfusion service, but they actually paid me. But I was in the medical microbiology labs in Edinburgh University at the time. So although I was paid by an outside agency, not really a private company, still a government-funded organisation.
And is that still the industry? The industry that's probably the career you're still in now, is it?
No, Probably about 3 years ago now, I stopped that line of work, and I I now do a sort of mixture of things. I've been involved in coaching sport for quite a long time, and I do that. I also do some tutoring in science subjects, and have students ranging from MSc level to sort of second year high school level.
Would that be biology or general science then?
Biology and chemistry. And for the younger ones, somewhat some physics as well. And my sort of order of knowledge of science is sort of physics least, chemistry next, and biology.
Okay. And do you have any background in the church or in faith, or active in faith?
I went to a Church of England primary school when I was young, and was subject to what I call the usual childhood indoctrination that was going on at the time I was young. I have no idea what it's like now, but I fell out of kind of any faith around about the age of somewhere between the age of 10, 8. Around the age of 8, I started to have doubts, and around about the age of 10, I was having arguments with the local vicar who used to come into the school once a week to give us religious education, and
At the age of 10, you were challenging the vicar.
Yeah.
Wow. Can you remember any questions that you were asking him?
Well, firstly, there was questions about Noah and the flood, because that just seemed utterly bonkers.
I've actually got a little bit of an outline there to talk to you about, and I was going to mention that towards the end. So that's interesting you said that.
But the other thing was some of the sort of Old Testament history that we got taught in our RE lessons just seemed to me to be completely completely immoral, completely lacking in any kind of this sort of loving kind of God kind of idea. So I challenged him a little bit about those sorts of things. We had some entertaining discussions.
Do you mean like the hymn "Onward, Christian Soldiers"? Do you think?
No, I mean hymns were just songs to be sung, I guess, at that age. Yeah. Really, I didn't think too much about the words of hymns. It was more some of the sort of wars and slaughter, sort of the walls of Jericho coming down, all these kinds of things, and around about that sort of early period in the Bible, which just seemed to me to be a bit nuts. But anyway, I don't want to get into a big theological discussion.
No, that's not the idea.
Since about the age of 10 or so, I haven't been at all religious.
Yeah, we're just getting some background. Okay. Yeah. So what about your favourite Christmas song? Do you have one?
My favourite Christmas song.
It's inflicted upon us, isn't it, when you go shopping?
Fairy Tale in New York.
Good man.
The Pogues.
Yeah. That's my only one as well. The rest is just it gives you a headache.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I grew up I was a teenager in the 70s, so some of the Slade and Wizard and things like that are still quite they're fun to sing along to.
Yeah, Chris Rea's not going to get home this year because he's got failed MOT.
Yeah. Chris Rea is pretty good, but
yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I would describe you then as a secular person. Would that be correct?
Yeah. It's fair enough. I don't like labels, but.
Yeah, I just dropped my mic, but so you're a secular person. But does anything the word sort of awe-inspiring?
Oh, hang on, there's somebody at my door. Can you hang on for just 30 seconds?
No problem.
Cheers.
Go ahead.
Right, sorry about that. I'm back.
That's okay. So you're a secular person, but do you ever get sort of an awe-inspiring moment when you look at the universe around us?
The universe is
Sorry, hang on, my mic was muted. Yeah, so
okay.
you're a secular person, but
Yeah.
do you ever have an awe-inspiring moment where you're looking at the universe, or even through a microscope at something on the small scale,
I mean,
and
all the time. Yeah, I mean, it, it doesn't even have to be. I mean, I've got a small telescope that I use, but it doesn't even have to be things like looking at through the telescope or down a microscope or things. Just yeah,
yeah,
everything about the world and the universe is awe-inspiring.
yeah, and I don't see a contradiction in that. I mean, a lot of people would see God in that, or in inspiration, but I would agree with you that when you look at the macro as well as is the opposite is micro, is it? Like the other day, I don't have much light pollution around here, and we had a lovely frosty evening, and just look up at the stars. Do you get much light pollution where you are?
Yeah, too much. I can get out into sort of away from it fairly quickly. So 10 minutes, 15 minutes drive at the most. I can be in pretty good sighting conditions. But it means I have to take the scope with me if I'm using that.
Yeah.
See
Has your
relatively
mic
little.
moved away from you?
Sorry.
Has your mic moved away? You've gone a bit low.
Sorry.
Oh, that's better. That's better.
Shouldn't be. I only use the mic on the laptop. So
No, you're
if I
coming through
look
okay now.
away
Yeah.
from the
Okay.
laptop, then the sound changes.
So you'd go out with your scope to a place where there's no light, or little light pollution.
I try to. It's not the easiest thing to
No, it's
transport
not.
around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can run it off the car. The trouble is that in order to do that, I need to have the car running, and that tends to set up enough vibration that it makes filming difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, let's get to a bit more meatier stuff now.
Yeah. Sure.
There's three things I got written here. Cognitive dissonance, Dunning-Kruger, and confirmation bias. How do we know that we're not using that? It's so easy to say to somebody, "Oh, that's Dunning-Kruger," or your confirmation bias. But how do we know that we're not doing the same thing?
By understanding, well, the cognitive dissonance, that is something everybody has, so you can't avoid that. So that's just that if something that you find out contradicts your beliefs or what you thought about a certain thing, then you experience that kind of uncomfortable feeling. That's cognitive dissonance.
And yeah,
And
okay. And the next step to that is whether you're prepared to change your mind, or just be
yes,
stupid and stick to what you've got.
well, yeah, it's often not a one-step process. That so if you I mean, I experienced some cognitive dissonance the first time I watched a few flat Earth videos on YouTube, because they were quite slickly made, and the arguments were presented in it's one of the things that annoys me about them. It was presented in a very adamant way that this is absolutely true, and the Earth is flat. It's not spherical. You have been lied to. And so I experienced cognitive dissonance at that point. My response to that was to go and actually do some more research and to find out, whether I had been lied to all my life or not. And it turned out very, very clearly that it was the flat Earth videos that were lying to me. And so you kind of overcome that awkward feeling, if you like. I think cognitive dissonance is misused by a lot of people that don't actually understand what it is. The second thing you mentioned, the Dunning-Kruger thing,
Yes.
Again, I would say that a lot of people are guilty of that, perhaps not everybody. And if I've got that right, and I'm terrible at not remembering things accurately all the time, but if I remember that correctly, that is people sort of claiming expertise in areas that they don't have it.
Yes, that's right. There's actually two ways. You can either go into an exam overconfident and you fail, or you can go into an exam feeling absolute crap and yet you pass. You're quite right. But it's that overconfidence. I'm right, and they can't see any beyond that.
And human beings are often guilty of this. And you know, but if you're aware that can be an issue, then at least in your more reflective moments, you're more likely to check yourself and kind of try and ensure that you don't do it. So it's sort of similar in a way to the cognitive dissonance thing. The third one was the confirmation bias, and I'd say that the same thing applies. Now, I've got two stints as a science student being taught how to avoid that kind of problem, as well as then another 30 years of actually doing research and getting papers published and so on. So
yeah, that was my question. How do we avoid it? So, but you say that you got trained.
Sort of being sensible enough to realise that those things exist, and being smart enough to and sort of honest enough to challenge yourself and say, wait a minute, am I? I mean, I've done it in the lab. I've actually designed a whole experiment, or little set of experiments, and started doing them, and then realized, no, this is actually just going to confirm my biases. This set of experiments, they're not actually very useful scientifically. And 4 or 5 days into that series of experiments, I was pretty young at the time, I on my own actually decided to stop doing them, and change the design of the experiments completely, so that it would not be the outcomes would not be simply a matter of confirmation bias, but would actually challenge the hypothesis I was aiming to test.
That's quite refreshing to hear you say that, Miles.
I think scientists do it all the time.
Okay.
I think your immediate instinct is, I think I know what's going on here, and you immediately try and design something to support your idea, and it's not the right way to do it. And it's a natural instinct. You want to prove yourself right. You want to or gather evidence that confirms you're right, because nobody likes being wrong about anything. And the training that scientists get, if it's good training, and it's not always, but mostly it is to not do that, but to actually try and prove yourself wrong more than you try and prove yourself right.
Okay, so in this row that's been going on for about 2 years, maybe even 3 years, is there a bit of gang mentality in it, like a playground gang mentality?
If you're talking about the flat Earth thing, which has been going on for quite some time, not just the last 2 or 3 years, probably more like 5 or 6 years on YouTube, I think. But it's certainly on YouTube there is a lot of that. It happens on both sides, I would say, but I find it more the stuff that comes from the flat Earth side I find more objectionable, although occasionally the globe side of things gets a bit out of hand as well.
Okay, it is a bit of them and us, isn't it?
It is, and one of the things I try to do in my videos is present evidence and to challenge things that other people present as evidence. not to attack the person themselves. And the difficulty is to get views, there's no point making it if 5 people watch it. So to get views, sometimes you have to try and make things a little bit more entertaining. And you have to pander a little bit to the people who are baying for blood, if you like.
I know exactly what you mean.
And try and give them a little bit of that. Last couple of videos recently, I've borrowed Gladys from Blue Marble Science, for example, just to add a little bit of amusement value, if you like.
Entertainment. I saw is the Creaky Blinder and Mr. Sensible having a chit chat. I found quite amusing.
Creaky Blinder, I think it was is wonderful. There's something about that Welsh accent that is fantastic. I just love it.
They're definitely playing to their audience, but it was amusing as well. It was quite funny. Yeah. Right. Okay. So right. Just very briefly, if you were given this in an exam to write an essay, maths is not observation. Discuss.
Oh, crikey!
Would you agree with that? The maths is not observation.
I can't say I've ever thought about that question in that way, phrased in that way, and I really would. If I was given that as an essay question, I would have to think very deeply about it before I even started writing.
That's fine.
I can give a quick answer to that.
Did you understand the context of why I said that, though?
Well, no, maybe you'd like to explain, because I might have misunderstood. But
yeah, well, no. Well, flat earthers are quick to say, well, maths doesn't prove anything. It's just a concept, or it's just a language. When the globe side presents their evidence, there is an awful lot of mathematics. Do you think it's a bit of a cop-out from flat earthers to say?
I think the way flat earthers talk about maths is dreadful. They say ridiculous things, and for example. A quote I saw attributed to Anthony Riley, Sleeping Warrior on YouTube, was I can't have a negative amount of ice cream. As a criticism of mathematics. Now, I had to do one maths course at university as an undergraduate, but I basically dropped maths after A levels. And I'm not a mathematician by any means, and I find certain concepts in maths quite challenging. The square root of -1 is impossible, so we'll call it I and do this with it. I remember stopping my maths teacher at that point and saying, "Hang on a minute, you just said it was impossible, and now you're going to use it?" Now, I've subsequently come to understand that imaginary numbers are not really imaginary, and I kind of understand why and how they're being used a little bit better. But maths, there are issues with maths, but saying something like maths is rubbish because I can't have a negative amount of ice cream is just silly.
Listen, we could spend hours talking about Sleeping Warrior.
And people do. And I think he quite enjoys it. I think that's part of the reason he does this.
I wish he was on your side. I really do.
Well, some people would suggest he maybe is, because the arguments he makes are so ridiculous that they actually support the globe. But we don't need any help.
All right. Well, this is a very, maybe an oversimplification of it. When I'm helping my daughter do her maths homework, a question maybe like Sally has £5 and she spends 60% on sweets. How much would she have left? Well, Sally doesn't exist. There's no £5 and there's no sweets to buy. It's just there on paper. Maths doesn't conclusively prove anything. It can help us to understand something. But resorting to maths as a proof, you need a lot more than that.
Well, I have an issue with this word proof. So actually, mathematics is probably the only place where you can genuinely have a proof of anything. But it's internal. It's within the within the constraints of the mathematical system we use. You can prove that the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the square of the other two sides. That can be formally proven. The science never tries to prove something is true. Science does set out to prove things are not true, or to at least get as close to proving something is not true as possible, in order to eliminate it from consideration that largely it's an explanation. So I would argue that flat Earth has been disproved. But proving the globe is a completely different matter. There must always be a small amount of room left to allow for there being some error or some alternative explanation. So the view of the Earth as a sphere has been modified over the years to oblate spheroid and to slightly irregular geoid. Hair-shaped geoid, if you want to misquote Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh, the flat earthers had a ball with that one. A ball.
and that's one of the really annoying things, because they just quote that completely out of context and deliberately attempt to misunderstand what he meant.
But of course, if you're honest, you'll know what he meant.
But it's still, even though the spherical model of the Earth has been refined now down to something that is incredibly accurate, there's still a remote possibility that the Earth isn't in fact that shape. We just perceive it as that shape, and I would say that possibility is vanishingly small, but still real. A little bit like the probability of an electron being somewhere other than near the nucleus of an atom is a real probability, but is so vanishingly small as to be it's always going to be close to the nucleus of the atom, even though there's a probability that it might be in the galaxy of Andromeda instead of here on Earth.
I heard. Yeah, I hope
you understand.
Saying,
you have to keep that window open. That there's just the chance that we've got everything wrong. I mean, there are many things that there is so much evidence to support them that you can really accept them as being essentially 100% proven. That DNA is the genetic material for all life, or most life on Earth, and where it's not DNA, it's RNA. That's so well established that, and so much evidence to back it up, that it's pointless almost considering any other possibility.
Okay, so I get what you're saying there, and it's actually something that I have learned over the past 5 years, that science does leave itself room for correction. But do you think there's a bit of groupthink, though, on both sides, or a major amount of groupthink?
It's important within science that people do question the sort of established ideas, and without it, then established ideas would never get changed, even when they're wrong. There's a difference between that, in my opinion, and what goes on with things like I hesitate to call flat Earth a conspiracy theory, but it kind of is. But those kinds of things on the internet, where there is it develops not so much a group think as a cult think, and that I find something of a problem.
Yeah, I've used the word cult actually against your followers as well in the past, and I want to get onto that because I think personality definitely comes into this debate, doesn't it?
It shouldn't do. The only thing that should matter is the evidence. But some people are more interesting and entertaining to listen to.
Okay, well, I think you and I got off to a bad start in more recent weeks. This is me breaking bread with you. When looking through your catalogue or your videos, definitely personalities come in. You've got like Gleam, Mark Sargent, me, Sleeping Warrior, Phuket Word, Dell. On my side, I've had a go at you, Bob the Science Guy, Sleeping Warrior.
Well, can I just stop you there? I've not had a go at anyone. I've had a go at the ideas or the evidence or the explanations that people have offered, not the person themselves.
Oh, okay, I'll retract that. Yeah, I have definitely had a go at you, though.
Yeah, well, I was going to mention that. I mean, I was surprised by your most recent video. I think you probably posted one with Slick since then, but I was surprised. And I actually I was actually going through it earlier this morning, and I made a couple of notes, but things that you said that I think are not very fair, but I don't want to actually get into the weeds on that. No, I may or may not make a response video at some point.
Yeah, okay. Well, listen, I'll remove
what
that
I'm
video
more interested in is the factual errors you make in the video. But
we'll get to that. Yeah. We'll get to that. No, we'll get to that. Listen, I felt there was a bit of passive aggressive tone to a video that you made about me. But then, if I was wrong, then I'll retract that statement.
Okay, so you asked me on, I think it was Travis's channel, or sometime around then, if I would have a look at an idea that you'd had, and I was more than happy to do so. I was surprised at how utterly wrong it would be, because you came across at that time as having thought about it in great detail. And come up with this explanation for something, and I thought, wow, fantastic. And then when I actually looked at it, I was amazed at how wrong it was. And maybe there was it's this difficult tight line to walk, between putting something out that is just so dry that nobody is going to want to watch it, or they'll watch the first 30 seconds of it and think yawn and not watch the content. In an effort to make it a bit more interesting, people actually like that. One of the things about the flat Earth debunking side of things is that the really successful people seem to be people who really do take the mickey out of people who think the Earth is flat. So your Simon Dans and your conspiracy cats and Creaky Blinder to an extent, cynical skeptic, fight the flat Earth. These guys, to a greater or lesser extent, really go on the attack on these guys and do.
I've actually recorded I've recorded an interview with Conspiracy Cats, but he was interviewing me, and he's edited it, and he says he's going to publish it sometime this week. So watch out for that one. That's me on the back foot. Okay, we'll move on from there. I've got a quote here from George Orwell: "All flat earthers are stupid, but some are more stupid than others." Would that be correct, or are we all just stupid?
I wouldn't say you're all stupid. In fact, I'm absolutely certain that there are some very intelligent flat earthers out there, but they're not really flat earthers, and they have identified something that they can exploit in order to make themselves some money and gain some notoriety.
Any names at all on that? It doesn't matter. You don't have to mention.
No, I'm just thinking. Do I mind? I've already had a go at one of them in a video to some extent. And that's Mark Sargent. I mean, Mark Sargent. I don't think Mark Sargent has any belief that the Earth is flat at all.
Oh,
I
okay.
think he knows for sure that it's not flat. It's simply for him. It's simply something he can use as a vehicle for his own advancement in whatever way he wants to do it. Now, I could be wrong about that, and this is not a scientifically arrived at conclusion. This is a purely kind of biased, emotional, if you like, semi-intellectual. There is some evidence to think this, but it's I'm perfectly happy for somebody to challenge that and to accept that I could be utterly wrong about Mark Sargent or about a number of others. I mean, Jeran, and there are more that I don't think they do believe the Earth is flat. There are some other people who are, I'm afraid, just not that bright, and they fall for what flat Earth, what people like Mark Sargent have done quite cleverly, and Eric Dubay and others, is to be able to put plausible sounding little soundbite things together that people can think they understand. Okay, so things like, the horizon always rises to eye level, or the horizon always looks flat, or these sorts of things sound perfectly plausible and are easy to understand, and so people who don't have a great grasp of science or maths accept them as being true, and that's the sort of the problem, if you like.
Yeah, Eric Dubay's 200 proofs that the Earth is flat or not a globe. I went through that recently, and I got it down to 39 real debatable subjects. 200 is a massive exaggeration. For instance, he uses the same argument. He uses the same argument for the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal. So that's really only one argument, not two.
Other people have said it's only about 17. To be honest, I have never gone through all 200 because life's too short.
Well, I got it down to 39 proper subjects to discuss, and I think out of the 39, a bit like yourself, when you first come across it, you think, oh, this is interesting, let's do a bit more investigation, and of that 39, I wouldn't use quite a number of them. It may be just a segue into the debate. That's as far as I can go with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, listen, here's something for you. 1901, Marconi transmitted a signal from Cornwall to Newfoundland. Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
Now the ionosphere only came not into existence, only discovered or played about with, as could it be there, 20 years later. So did the radio wave going 3,000 miles or maybe 2,000 miles at the time was considered to be, well, how did it do that? And then the ionosphere came after that as an explanation. Was the ionosphere created to support, I mean, we've even got the word sphere in it, support the fact that Marconi transmitted a signal over a flat Earth, but because we don't believe in flat Earth, the ionosphere was created with a bias. Do you understand the question?
I think so. It's a slightly odd question. So are you challenging whether the ionosphere exists or not?
I'm looking at the logic of it. Did it come afterwards because we needed it?
No, I don't think so. I think.
Did
I don't know
Marconi?
enough about the discovery or the discovery, I guess, of the ionosphere. But I would imagine that it came from a lot of detailed and painstaking scientific effort, and it may have been postulated before it was discovered. I really have no idea. But there are many examples of this. I mean, people talk about relativity, Einstein's work being being sort of done to explain various physics experiments that preceded it that appeared to have anomalous results. And that's simply not the way things work. What happens when science has when there's some kind of experimental result that doesn't fit with the accepted sort of paradigm at the time, then it's simply sort of like, well, we don't know why this is the case, and some people will go and research it. Very often the explanation doesn't come from people directly trying to answer that question. Why did this experimenter get this particular result? The explanation comes from somebody who's working on something utterly different, but happens to discover something that does explain that anomalous result. And I would imagine that the ionosphere falls into that category. But I don't know. I haven't looked into that.
I wouldn't have expected you to do. What I'm saying is that rocket power was developed in the 30s and the 40s, where we could get far enough away from the Earth, look back, and then see whether it's a globe or not. But at the time, it appeared that Marconi had transmitted over a flat surface because there was no concept of the ionosphere. So did the ionosphere was somebody dishonest enough to create the ionosphere concept so that we can put to bed Marconi's ability?
I said, I don't know, but
maybe you'll follow.
I would be very, very surprised if that was the case. I mean, I would imagine that it was simply something that was discovered, and they went, "Oh, right," and how it's possible for radio waves to bounce off the ionosphere, which I have sort of heard about. Although, again, I'm not an expert on that at all. That these things came afterwards and provided an explanation for something that previously had not had an explanation. And that's what science does. It provides explanations for things that prior to that piece of scientific work, we did not have an explanation for.
Well, you've already preempted what was my next point, and there's a similar parallel about the Michelson-Morley experiment, that it took 20 years for the Einstein's theory of special relativity to explain why it didn't do what they expected to do.
Yeah.
Have you made a video on the Michelson-Morley experiment?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I did some stuff on Cavendish experiments, which I discovered that actually the Cavendish experiment is, and I published a video to this effect, saying that when you try and do it yourself with a homemade kit, it's very difficult to actually get something. So my first effort seemed to bear out the Cavendish type experiment very, very simply. But it turned out when I went back to repeat that and to do some calculations that I was misled. So a bit of not cognitive dissonance, confirmation bias going on there. And I then published another video saying, look, I've discovered that actually probably air currents in the room are having at least as much of an effect, if not a bigger effect, than any gravitational attraction, and I need to do more work on this. And I did actually spent about a fortnight of trying to do it every day, and realized that it needed far more sophisticated equipment than I was prepared to actually sort of invest in and invest the time making or whatever. But I've heard that BM Furball has actually done this and made a homemade kit, and I've watched umpteen videos with university students doing these experiments with sort of professionally built kits that seem to get the right result. So
I think that the Cavendish experiment debate has been one big fat red herring, because it doesn't tell us anything about the shape of the Earth. What it demonstrates is that mass attracts mass, and that doesn't tell me what shape the Earth is.
Well, it's not designed to show you what shape the Earth is. The reason that Cavendish comes up is because certain flat earthers know that gravity pretty much wrecks the whole idea of a flat Earth, and so there is a need to claim that gravity doesn't exist, or that the thing we call gravity is not due to mass attracting mass in the way that Einstein and Newton before him and physicists have thought. So that's why Cavendish is relevant, because flat earthers want to say Cavendish is a lot nonsense.
I don't think it's even relevant. Mass attracting mass. I observe that. I experience that. Something keeps me on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
we call that thing gravity. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. There's gravity is a lot more than just the bit that we observe on a local level. Mm-hmm. But this George Musa affair, holy God. George Musa is the total antithesis of quantum eraser, sleep warrior, and that side of the debate, and yet they've cherry picked one thing that he's said and run with it, and now everybody else is groupthink. Gravity isn't a force, but you can think of it as a force. I wish he hadn't have said that.
Well, I think I'm actually working on a theory of gravity of my own. I have no idea. It's probably utter rubbish, and I'll probably convince myself that it's utter rubbish fairly soon. I've only started real work on it in about the last 2 or 3 weeks, although the idea I had probably about 9 months to a year ago. And I'm going to send it to a physics professor, and if they look at it, I'll find out whether it's tosh or not. If I don't discard it myself, because I'm still looking at it. I think gravity is a really fascinating thing, and physicists are desperate to incorporate it properly into the sort of theory of everything, if you like. What gravity is, we don't know.
Exactly, we don't know, but we can observe it on a local level.
Well, we can observe it on far more than a local level. We can observe it on a huge level now.
Okay. Well, listen.
Effects.
The effects. Yeah. Okay. Well, you preempted me when you said the Michelson-Morley experiment. Mm-hmm. As far as I can gather, they wanted to be able, or they were trying to measure the speed of the Earth going around the Sun, and they started with the assumption that there was an ether, and that the Earth was actually moving around the Sun, but their experiment didn't support anything, and it was all sort of in the air.
I might have it wrong, but I think they were trying to measure the ether wind, or get evidence for that. So they speculated an ether. If the Earth was traveling through the ether, there would be some sort of ether wind. I might have this wrong. I might be confusing it with one of the other experiments. But the outcome was not what you would intuitively expect for a moving Earth. But relativity came along, and it apparently explains why that result was obtained, even though the Earth is moving.
Yeah, I was creating a parallel there with the Marconi as well. Mm-hmm. It took 20 years for Einstein to present his theory of special relativity that explained why the Michelson-Morley experiment had a null result. I'm going to put my flat Earth hat on here and say that was it fudged? And it really did prove that the Earth isn't moving around the sun. We have another experiment that came along by George Staniak, and I can't understand exactly what he did, but that's claimed by the flat Earth side to show that special relativity is a nonsense. You're not coming back on that one?
No, sorry, I didn't realise you'd finished.
Oh,
I thought there was going to be another line there. I don't know enough about these. As I said, I'm most definitely not a physicist, and my understanding. I've made a couple of videos about gravity, and I will challenge people who say density is all you need. But my understanding of physics is not sufficient to be able to say one way or the other whether you know.
yeah.
What I would say is that I know that physicists operate in the same science world that I operated in, where if something was wrong about something as fundamental as Einstein's theory of relativity, if it was sort of created simply to explain away things and keep things quiet, scientists that would have lasted about 10 minutes, figuratively speaking. In science, scientists like nothing more than showing other scientists that they're wrong.
Okay.
Yeah. And there is no, this is where the conspiracy theory bit gets completely out of hand. The idea that every scientist is in on it is just ridiculous.
I don't think anybody's actually saying that.
Well, some people are. Some people do. Some people genuinely think that every scientist in the world who does something that's connected to this, and they think, some people think the same thing about evolution theory. Example, all biologists are in on this to keep the young Earth sort of secret. It's just that is just crazy thinking, and it's difficult to put it any other way. And it's kind of what you have to think, though. If you think that relativity, if you're going to claim that relativity is not true, you've been used for 100 years now, and found to be correct in every example that you might expect it to be. You have to postulate that all the physicists been working on that and related subjects are somehow in on some big con.
Okay, well, I certainly don't take that position. Something you mentioned there about density and buoyancy, you made a couple of videos on that. Density and buoyancy is a manifestation of gravity.
Yeah. Well, they're connected in.
Yeah, of course they are. Yeah, and flat earthers are stupid to say that density and buoyancy is the only explanation of what we see.
Yes, although having said that, as I said, I've got a little idea cooking away about gravity, which actually I think might have been triggered by the suggestion that it was only due to density, and you could explain everything we see in terms of density and buoyancy. And that may have triggered my idea. And if my idea turns out to have any mileage in it at all, then that'll be a good thing for flat Earth, if you like, because they may have triggered an idea.
I hope you don't get any self-doubts about it, and you'd actually finish it off, because I'd love to hear it.
Well, it's not too different from relativity, but it has, I think, a slight, a subtle difference that might be enough to explain something. But Yeah, but I'm not going to get. I probably shouldn't have said anything about it, but
Okay,
I
okay.
doubt the
Well,
number. I doubt the number of people who are going to watch this video will make any difference. But anyway, yeah.
okay. Let's talk about the Firth of Forth.
Oh,
That's
okay.
you, yeah.
Yeah.
For our American cousins that hopefully are listening in, can you tell us about the Firth of Forth just briefly?
Well, a firth is in Scotland is pretty much just a river estuary. Forth River, enters the North Sea, and it's quite a big, wide-mouthed estuary, and there's some islands in it. And if you get to the right spot, you can take some pretty nice pictures of them. And if you're far enough away, they start to become less and less visible until eventually they're not visible at all.
Okay, that old chestnut, eh? I challenged you on the island of Craigleith.
Yes.
It was behind, what was the other
It's
island
behind
called?
Fidra,
Fidra, yes, yeah.
from when viewed from Kinghorn. Yeah.
Now, when you responded to my video, you gave me a bit of an essay, which I appreciate, and you questioned the height of Craigleith. And since you said that, I've been doing a bit of research as well. Now, according to Google Earth and Wiki, it's 24 meters above mean sea level.
You do know Google Earth is inaccurate.
Can I tell you what else I found?
Yeah.
Ordnance Survey.
Yeah.
At one point says it's 27 meters high, and on another one it says it's 39 meters high.
Yeah.
So we've got three different measurements there.
I've got some Ordnance Survey maps that show 100-meter contour line on Craigleith. So that places it. Sorry, 100-foot contour line, not 100-meter. 100-foot contour line, which and a topographic map that says the high point is 115 feet, which puts it at 35 meters. So we've got anything from 24 meters on Wikipedia up to 39 meters. You've said now.
Yeah.
It's one of the problems of the internet is certainly when things get on Wikipedia, if a website is being put together by, say, a tourist board or something like that, and they're wanting to point out various features or something, they'll go to Wikipedia to get their information. And if Wikipedia is wrong, that information then gets repeated. And one of the things that got me into flat Earth kind of debunking stuff was the fact that there is so much wrong information out on the internet, and it's really annoying.
It is annoying. It is, because I've lost the high ground in that particular argument, because you created a doubt, and I'm now doubting it. So how would you and I get to know the actual height above mean sea level of Craigleith? How could we do it?
You and I will probably find it pretty difficult. I do have one of my subscribers sent me an old, it's 1950s level, and I could use that to sort of determine a level line of sight to the top of Craigleith from various places, but it's not a theodolite, and so I couldn't measure angles properly using it, and the only way to do it would be to measure angles from various other locations and to do some calculations.
Yeah, I think well, you and I, to be honest with each other, would have to do it shoulder to shoulder. I agree we'd need to take a number of different angles at it. Could we just use like tan 45 if we're in a little boat, and whenever the angle gets to 45 degrees, then the distance from the boat to the highest point would be the same distance in its height?
Oh, you could do things like that, but I mean, it would have to be a pretty calm day to get an accurate angle. Yeah. So, it's not easy. It's not a trivial, straightforward thing. I mean, if you actually Jesse Cosy, the surveyor from the States who's been involved in flat Earth stuff. I mean, he sent me, and he's published online, some links to some books about the early surveyors who, back in the 1800s, were surveying the USA for basically their version of Ordnance Survey maps. The same thing was going on in the UK around about the same time, I think. The detail that these guys went to and the hardships they put up with in order to create these maps was astounding.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it's not a trivial exercise to do.
Well, listen, I think I was going to say, I think it's a work in progress, this Craigleith.
Well, I mean, I can give you one other little bit of information. I mean, firstly, the Craigleith does appear slightly below the figures that I trust most, which I got from Ordnance Survey and some topographic maps, give Craigleith as 35 meters, and the focal height of the Fidra lighthouse is 34. Now that may or may not be from the same sea level datum, so there's some question marks there. But it does actually appear very slightly below the focal height from my view from Kinghorn. But the most important evidence in that video is the disappearance of lamb, and something that's not included in that, but I actually have video and photographic evidence of, is if you go further along the coast, further away from those islands, the Fidra and Craigleith both disappear, and you can still see the top of Bass Rock. And yes, there are various atmospheric effects going on. The point I was trying to make in my video is that in spite of the fact that there is some looming, there's some inferior miraging, there's some slightly odd effects you get at the horizon. Even when there's looming, you can sometimes get a sort of inferior mirage if you look at a shallow enough angle. Ultimately, things that you ought to be able to see, Bass Rock is further away than Craigleith or Fidra. So if we can still see part of Bass Rock, then on a flat Earth you should still be able to see Craigleith and Fidra. And you can't; they're gone. From Dalgety Bay, they're gone completely.
Well, I'm not going to make a counter argument to that. I think that's for another platform. If anybody's going to watch my video that I made, just ignore my tone. Look at my figures, and I think it is a work in progress, Miles.
Well, I'm gonna make another video about it because I've got this other footage. I'm also tomorrow getting a better camera.
What are you getting?
I'm getting a P1000.
Good man. On another day, if it was high pressure, lots of clarity, and a sort of a mill pond calm sea, you could possibly see the island that you can't see in the video that you presented. If you could do the same for me, it would, if you get the chance.
Look, from Kinghorn, from the beach, it depends. Tide is a big thing. I mean, tides here, I think, if I remember right, they're usually about 4 or 5 meters difference between high and low tide. It might be a bit more. The tide will make a difference, and how far, even if you get the same elevation above the water, the water is there's more of the island above the water because the tide is at low tide. So you might be able to see it from Kinghorn. I would be very surprised if you could see lamb from Dalgety Bay or from Aberdour, and I've got shots of both of them on any occasion. But yeah.
You set yourself at 5 meters above at Kinghorn, looking at lamb.
And again, that was approximate. So that video wasn't designed to be particularly accurate. I did give the camera elevations. Actually, I think the camera elevations are wrong for that video. My subsequent research, I think although again, it depends on which particular site and which particular map you look at. So I've got topographic maps that show 88 meters for that point, where the high point, where I was taking those, which would work out not far from being 27 meters, which is what I claimed. But I've also got Ordnance Survey maps that suggest it's only 88 feet. I've got other Ordnance Survey maps that suggest it's only 50 feet. So, it's the idea behind that video was to simply show that things disappear when you go down low, and my claim was not that it was proof of anything, but that it was a clear example of evidence supporting the curved Earth, because on a flat Earth that should not happen unless someone can come up with some new physics involving light and optics, especially looking over water. Nobody has yet. I mean, the closest anyone's got is Travis, and all Travis has got is 2 words, or 1 word if it's 1 word. He's got no explanation.
But so, he supports it though, doesn't he? I mean, he's looking at.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't support it at all, and until you can actually come up with an explanation. And the point is that physics has got a really good explanation for those effects that we see, and they don't cause things to disappear from the bottom up on a flat surface.
Can we debate that on another channel?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I know we're going on a bit. We've gone a bit past time,
we'll consider what you're doing over the Firth of Forth as a work in progress.
Oh, it is. I mean, one of the reasons I was going to use the lighthouses in the Forth as a main line of argument in videos, and I realised that there is so much variability shooting over water because of the temperature changes and the effect that has on refraction, that it was very difficult. And that's what prompted me initially to look at the old Forth Road Bridge from a trig point near Dunfermline. And then when that was encouraging, but the height differences were relatively small, 20 meters or so, I then went to Traprain Law in East Lothian, where I could get several hundred meters of change, and ultimately nearly 1,000 meters of drop demonstrated at an elevation where the chances of any major refraction effects were vanishingly small.
Okay, I look forward to more videos from you. I did have one more thing. Have you got another 10 minutes?
Yeah, sure. I've got as much time as you want.
Okay. You mentioned about the flood of Noah's Day being.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you to play. To play what had I written here? To play a Bible apologist and try and justify something for me. Where I can't find it now. Okay, listen. The flood of Noah's Day. The story goes that God said to Noah, "Build a boat and take 2 of every animals." And so some of the animals that he'd have taken on would have been marsupials, such as a wombat, a kangaroo, and Tasmanian devil. They floated about for however, I think it took about a year before it settled on Mount Ararat in Turkey. And then the marsupials decided, no, this isn't suitable for us. Let's make our way to somewhere else. And they ended up in Australia. Does that sound like a flawed story to you?
Yeah.
That only marsupials are found in Australia, and yet they started in Turkey according to the Bible.
Yes, it does. Yeah. More importantly, as far as I understand, and I wouldn't claim to have researched it, there are no fossil remains of marsupials anywhere between Turkey and Australia.
No. So it's a massive question. Such an incredulous story. Other than they could say, well, all things are possible with God.
Yeah.
that God just did it anyway.
Yeah. God thought, "Ha, what a super wheeze! Let's trick all the humans." Yeah. But we'll not trick them. We'll not trick them until they're sophisticated enough to have made enough equipment and scientific discoveries to be able to understand what fossils are and so on.
Now, the reason why I said that is because I find something else on the science side to be just as unbelievable, and that's the Big Bang. That from nothing, or from the tiniest dot.
You do know, I was going to say you've changed that slightly. The Big Bang doesn't say that from nothing.
There had to be something there, but from that tiniest dot, and the measurement of that dot has got smaller over the years, and from that dot, everything came into existence. I find that to be just as ridiculous story as the marsupials starting off in Turkey and ending up in Australia.
Right. So that's in some ways I agree with you. I certainly understand why you would find such a thing ridiculous. I find it very, very difficult to get my head around, and I haven't, probably because I simply don't have the necessary knowledge or ability with maths. I haven't looked into any of the maths on it at all. I'm in the position where I have to accept that the physicists know what they're doing. But we started this conversation with, early on in this conversation, talking about how awe-inspiring the universe is in many, many ways. And it is utterly awe-inspiring that something as big as the universe could be generated from something so small.
And do you temporarily accept that story, or would you?
So my view on the Big Bang is that there is considerable evidence that the sort of inflation model, as they call it, that the universe was once very small and rapidly expanded and is continuing to expand now. There is certainly evidence the universe is continuing to expand now, and there is evidence that the rapid expansion phase happened, as I understand it, from cosmic microwave background. So there's reason there to accept what the scientists, the physicists are saying.
Yeah, could it be?
But could they be wrong? Of course they could, and they would probably accept that.
I wasn't going to say could they be wrong. Could the universe be like breathing in and out? That like everything's cyclical. It's at the moment it's expanding.
Well, at the moment,
but it may go back in again and back and then back out and back in.
Well, that was one idea as I understood it. At the moment, I think that the favourite idea, and this is something that flat earthers do and other people do about science, they say, science is saying that this is a fact, when in fact most scientists would accept that our knowledge about the early universe and our knowledge about what happened before that period of rapid inflation is very scant. We in fact probably close to zero. We don't really know anything before that point, and what's going to happen in the future we can't really say, but we can observe the current universe and we can say, well, the universe is currently expanding, and that expansion seems to be accelerating. And I think the current view is that acceleration, that expansion, and that acceleration of that expansion will continue, and because the only thing to pull it back together seems to be gravity, and it appears that gravity is incapable of now pulling the universe back into a smaller size. But I mean, that might change. Who knows what discoveries will be made in the next
or this new theory of gravity that you've got.
Well, my new idea about gravity isn't so very different. So it's just a bit of a tweak on perhaps on the space time idea. And
Right. Okay.
so I don't think it would make much difference. But who knows? I mean, I'm probably wrong anyway, so that's fine.
Listen, Miles, thank you very much for giving me your time. It's been an enjoyable discussion. No doubt we'll rub shoulders in some of the other forums very soon.
Thank you, and I have enjoyed it, and I would say that what you've said about the video you made is very pleasing to hear, that you've actually gone and checked something out and realised that there's some doubts about one or two of the things that you've said, that's good to hear. And I do hope you understood why your lens idea of the atmosphere, why I treated it the way I did, because I don't want to fall out with people, and I don't make videos with the express purpose of ridiculing people. Some debunkers do, and I understand why they do it, and I will admit to having a bit of a giggle at times whilst watching them. But
yeah,
it's not my style.
No. Okay. All right. Well, we've broken bread. We see each other a bit more clearly, and I look forward to talking to you again.
I'll be happy to have another chat anytime.